Hey everybody, welcome to week 9 and Tangle 25. We left off right before sprint planning for the new sprint. And before jumping in, I'm going to do a few things for Jira to make our life easier. So you can see the sprint is empty and we have our backlog of 20 issues down below here. Now, one of the things you might notice here is that these priorities that we made in the last episode, it's not sorting at all by these priorities, which is something that we want. So, for example, the first stuff I want to work on is this switching between content type stuff, so I can change the priority right here by clicking this and choosing critical. And I'm going to do these three together. And then, as you can see, the optional stuff and even the minor stuff is not being sorted. So we need to change the filter of our board. Okay, this whole thing is called a board. Go into triple dot menu and do configure board. And in the general section down below, it says save filter, filter for tan board. So I'm going to click edit filter query. And normally it shows this. This is the kind of easy way of dealing with filters and searches, but I always use something called JQL. So you can click switch to JQL, and everything you need to know about JQL, if you click this question mark, it's on this page. And I highly suggest that you go through and learn what you can about JQL because it's going to make your experience in Jira much better. So this is ordering by rank. Rank is when you drag and drop things in a list, and that's not how I want to do things. I want to order them by priority. So, and descending order. And within issues of the same priority, I want to sort them by the epic name, so they get combined. And then within the same epic, I want to go by the key, which is this tan1 and tan17. Click search, and you can see that it's doing it according to priority. I'm going to click save as to make a new filter. And I'm just going to call this Tangle board. And right away, whenever you create a filter, click details and do edit permissions. So everyone in the project should be able to see it. And then only administrators should be able to change it. Let's go look back at the backlog and see if that changed anything. Not yet. The reason is I have to go into the board settings and change my filter because it's still pointing to this existing filter that we had here. So if I click the pencil, I can choose Tangle board. And now if I go to the backlog, you can see that now priority is being honored. Another thing I'd like to change is instead of saying to do and in progress and done, which is what you get out of the box, if you click view workflow, you can see that these are the states that any issue can have. And this is too simplistic for my taste. So what we're going to do is go into the Jira settings, go down to issues, and then you'll see workflows. The one we're using is this one here. I'm going to click add workflow, create new, and I'm just going to call this Tangle workflow. Everything starts with the circle. I'll put it over here. And then it transitions to the state open. All right, I'm going to make a couple of extra states. After the definition of ready has been passed, it goes from open to ready. And then it gets put into a sprint and it stays in the ready state. But when the developer that's been assigned starts working on it, they'll put it into in progress. And when they're done, they mark it complete and it goes into the review status. And then after the definition of done is met, it goes into the done status. So let's add these transitions. So You just kind of draw a line here between the two, and then it says add transition, and you give it a name. And I tend to be action oriented, verb oriented. So I'm going to say mark ready. Everything starts with open, then you mark it ready to go ready. Then you do start progress to do in progress. Then you mark completed for review. And then you mark done to go into done. You should also add a blocked status and allow all statuses to transition to this one. So you should be able to go into and out of the block status wherever you want. So I'll just put this up here. Whereas the rest of these are kind of forcing you to go in a line. Now, if the review fails, you need to have a status that goes back to ready. And we'll call that request changes. Likewise, if you decide to stop working on something and put it back into the ready state, you can do that as well. So that's different than blocked. So halt progress just means you decided to work on something else, whereas blocked means that you're waiting for some action before you can progress. Okay, I'm satisfied with this workflow now. I have to put it into our project. So I'm going to go to project settings, and down here it says workflows. And you can see that all of our issue types are assigned to this workflow. So I'm going to add one, add existing, choose Tangle workflow, hit next, and now I'm going to choose all of the ticket types and click finish, and then publish. Jira needs a little help because the to-do state is no longer in the workflow. And it's making a good guess here, which is that all to-do goes to open, which is correct. Now, if I go back to the backlog, you're going to see that there's no longer anything in the backlog, but don't panic. We're going to go into configure board, and you'll see something called columns. Now, these are the columns that are in your Scrum board. And you can see that this column has the to-do state, which no longer exists. So I'm going to just get rid of that and move open and ready. And then I'm going to put in progress and review here, and just put blocked here as well. We can add some columns if we want to, but let's keep things simple for now. Now, if I go back to the backlog, you can see my tickets are here, and they all have open as a status. And then you can see it says transition to ready and transition to blocked. So all of the open ones, that's what you can do at this point. Now I have my backlog sorted by priority and with the tickets in the open state. I would like to collect the things I want to present to the team for discussion during the sprint planning. So to do that, I'm going to go into the search bar and then click View All Issues. This is your general view to just play with Jira tickets. One thing you can do with filters is put in your own columns that you want to put. So I'm not interested right now in, but I do want. This is good enough for now. So I'm going to save this as a filter. I'm going to call this stories to review, and immediately go into details and do what I did before, which is anybody in the project can see it and only administrators can edit it. Using filters in this way is enormously useful. It really helps you organize your work in Jira. So now that I have this filter, I can go in and do bulk change on the filter. It pulls this list up, and then I can specify the ones that I worked on during the grooming session. So the big question is whether I want to move the infrastructure ones forward These are not going to use Gherkin. And all right, yeah, I'm going to mark them already. So click next. And then you can do transition issues through workflow. And it's going to give you your options, which is mark ready. So we'll click next. This check mark is if you want everybody who is watching this to get an update about the change. In general, this turns out to be spam, so I just hit confirm without it. Now you can see that these are the remaining ones that are in the filter. So because they're no longer in status open, they're not showing. Let's go back to the backlog. And you can see that a lot of these are in the ready status. Ready means the team leads are ready for the larger team to look at them, ask questions, and ultimately estimate them in the sprint planning. One way to do this is simply just go down and click on this little thing here and put in numbers of story points. That's pretty quick, but I want to use a different technique called planning poker. And to do that, I'm going to add a plugin to Jira for that purpose. I'm going to just type in planning poker Jira. And this is free for up to 10 people. So I'll click try it free. Big Fractal request app. So at this point, the app has been requested from the Jira site administrator, which is not my personal account. So I'm going to switch to that account to approve the request. Go into the Jira settings here and go down to apps and then app requests and then click on planning poker. Since this is free, I'm not going to do try it free. I'll click on this and go into pricing, see details. And then you can see right here, I can click get it now. It still wants to do a free trial. It really wants to do a free trial. Okay. Planning Poker installed successfully. Is ready for use. All right, I'm going to configure, see what we got in here. Okay, that looks good. Log back into my normal account. To show Planning Poker, I am going to open up 2 other browsers and log in with different accounts so I can play 3 different roles. So Chrome Tim is going to be the Scrum Master, and I will initiate the poker session, which is listed down here on the left. Click New Game, and I'm going to call it Sprint 2 Poker, and these are all good. So I'm going to click Next, and now we want to choose what's going to go into it, and I can do Status Ready, and then everything that's ready will show up there, and then click Start Game. Go to Safari, Planning Poker, and join, and then Firefox. So go back to Chrome and the Scrum Master will pick the first story. Now, presumably there's either an in-person meeting or some kind of a teleconference call. So I'm going to start with this one here and click Estimate Now. So it shows the ticket, and right below that, it has these cards. These are story points that you click to say, I think it's going to take this number of story points. And you'll notice that it's a Fibonacci sequence. The reason why you use Fibonacci numbers is because if you make them doubling, it doesn't work as well. Like in this case, you have to decide like, okay, well, is it 5 or is it 8? Well, it's not quite 10. So it makes you sort of make a choice that's a little bit to the left or the right of double. There's also a couple of cards here. Coffee break is if somebody decides that they need to postpone the meeting for some reason, or this is simply, I don't know enough. This is too complicated for me to be able to deal with. So before you can have people pick story points, you need to understand what a story point is. And the way this is traditionally done is to have what's called a keystone story, a story that has already been estimated that gives you a sense for how big things are. So I'll open up the previous sprint here and look at done stories and show people that this API story was 2 story points. And then this navigation story of just going from thing to thing was 2 story points also. So that should give both front end and back end developers kind of an anchor or keystone to be able to pick their points. All right, so here I'm going to say that this one is probably a little harder than that, but not by much. So I'm going to say 3 there. And actually, we can do a countdown too. So it gives people a time limit. So if I go over here, you can see the countdown going down. And we're going to say that Safari Tim is reckless. Okay. So we're going to say that he thinks it can be done in 1 story point. And then let's say Firefox is just overly cautious and it's going to say 8. All right. So then if you go back, they reveal the story points. Next, what usually happens is that you ask the person with the lowest points to explain their thinking and with the highest points to explain their thinking. So, hey, Falco Tim, why do you think it's going to be so hard? Well, it's because we're going to have to implement all of these different things, like, whether it's bold or whether it's this or whether it's that, and I just think that, it could end up being pretty difficult. And what about you, Fractal Tim? What do you think? Oh yeah, no, this is probably just a component that we can just drop in and it'll just do it for us, and so it shouldn't be hard at all. And so they kind of go through the conversation, and you can add comments to the issue itself if more clarification is discovered during the conversation. You ultimately come up with an answer, and then the Scrum Master puts it into this box here. So after talking about some things that might be hard, or talking about some things that might be easy, let's say you settle on a number of 5. Okay, this has something to do with the app. I'll just say fix this for me. Now that ticket is no longer in the list, so it went down by 1. Before moving on, let's look at the backlog. So you can see that the 5 has been entered here for us. So now to finish out the sprint planning, you go through and just do this process for each one. So now you go switching between entry content types, estimate now, and go through all of them. Now, a very important part of sprint planning is having a number in mind for what can be accomplished in the sprint, which is called the capacity of the sprint. So, for example, last sprint, I completed 7 story points. This is the number that kind of grows as you go. And so, in general, you want to hit your velocity, which is your capacity, and then add on some more. So, for example, if you did 20 last time, you want to pick enough tickets for like 30. So you want to have enough work so that if people finish early, they can continue. As Scrum Master, you can also skip and postpone a particular ticket that you're looking at if it's too contentious or you just want to come back to it, or you can remove it. So let's say that, it's made known that it's not ready for the sprint. And so you can just remove it from contention in the sprint planning session. So I'm going to go through and estimate all of these quickly. And all the while look at the sum here, and I'm shooting for, I think I'm going to just be a little bit more expansive in my story point definition. So we're going to go for 20. Since it's just me, I'm going to skip the rest of the game and estimate the story points using the backlog, assign them to me, and move them into the sprint. Okay, all the readies are in the sprint and estimated. And you can see there's 30 total story points, which is a stretch goal. And now it's time to start the sprint. But first, I'm going to change the dates so that starts today. And I'm going to go for 4 weeks. And start. There's our board. See you in the next episode.